perhaps it's just too infinite, right? Too beyond the scope of what the human brain is able to imagine, right? Or to cognize or to make sense of. And so in this regard, if you think there is a limitation on what we can know, then you are some type of skeptic, right? So skepticism is a term in philosophy, specifically epistemology, when one takes the position that there are at least some things we cannot know. So that's the moderate version of skepticism, right? Saying that there are some things we can know, but there are some things that we can't. And then there's a lot of disagreement on what it is that we can't know. And that comes primarily from David Hume as a mitigated skeptic, as well as some just hypothetical questions about, questioning the external world, which we get a little bit from Descartes is in academic skepticism, right? So like the idea is maybe we can't trust our senses, right? Maybe we're in, a hologram, as some people have theorized, right? Or the idea is no, we can only trust our senses and we can't trust anything else. Okay, so those, we're going to talk a little bit more about those. But the other idea is that, well, maybe it's more than just some things we can't know. In fact, maybe we can't know anything at all. This is known as Pyrrhonian skepticism, right? It would be the most radical view. And it basically goes on the idea that, yeah, you can't trust your senses, but you also can't trust your reason as well, because we are so easily confused, right, and mistaken about things. I'm not sure how these guys got out of bed in the morning, right? But the idea was that you can't know anything at all. So different degrees of skepticism, but they all have to do with thinking that there is at least some things that we cannot know. They're beyond our capability. All right, so that leads us to the primary views, or what I like to call camps, in epistemology throughout the history. And these are important to understand because even though there's a variety of them, as we're going to see, they're all going to have some things in common, and perhaps you can already guess why if you take a look at these photographs, right, these paintings, is that all of these theories were produced by very privileged, right, wealthy, white men. Okay, and so the idea here is that feminists are going to look back at these theories and say that all of them are problematic because they're all going to be underscored by this bias, right, that is going to come not just from those individual men, but the societies in which they lived, right, which were patriarchal, right, misogynistic in the ways that we've been learning about, right? So the idea is not just whether or not them as individuals were biased, but perhaps their ideas are problematic because they were developed within a flawed system, right? So that sort of systemic problem actually impacts the views themselves and not just the personal opinions of these individuals. Okay, and so this has to do primarily with these theories or camps, have to do with the disagreement about where knowledge comes from, right? So if we go back to justified true belief, right, the idea is where do we get that justification, right? Where does it come from, right, that will give us knowledge? And so there are, again, two main camps or splits along views in response to this question. The first one comes